In a world where the base change every day.
Today's lucky base is base 12.
So hi everyone. So last time we talked about what would the better base be instead of like picking 10. Pick two interesting comments. The first one was from Raleigh. And what she was saying was about like the imperial system. So last time we kind of trashed the imperial system, like any imperial system, saying that it's a bit useless and why would you use that kind of system? But Riley was saying that like maybe it kind of makes sense when related to something because it's related to something real. So for example, like one foot, it can be related to like something real, which is a foot. But more importantly, like it was related to like the days. So we said in the last episode that a day is 24 hours and that is like a bit random. But for example, the year is 365 days and it means something, meaning like it's 365 like real revolution of the earth. For that kind of thing, like when it's related to something real, it might make sense to use an imperial system.
Well, it makes sense. It's understandable where it comes from, right? It's an explanation. But an explanation is not a justification. I think it's a very good point, and that's true that some stuff exist in nature, and in particular like the number of days in a year is a tough one, because like 365 doesn't really correspond to anything. It's annoying, but it is fair that it makes it easier to reason about stuff that we see. So I don't think it's a current justification for the imperial system, because right now nobody's measuring stuff with their feet and pounds and stuff like that. So, but for years and days, I guess it makes sense. So I think the only reasonable solution is to move away from the Earth and to go colonize a planet where the period of rotation around its sun is a multiple of the period of rotation of self-revolution. I think anything other than that would be purely irrational.
So we pick the planet just for that. Like not for
I
any other
mean,
reasons.
it's the only thing that makes sense, right?
Yeah, clearly.
Anyway, should we move on to Florian's comment? Or should I say comments?
Yeah.
Because there are so many parts of it. He was saying that about other bases that are used orally, we often use base 20. And I guess it's weird that we didn't talk about this at all, because we both lived in France, and like base 20 is very important in the French language, right? You hear it in the construction of the fucked up construction of number that is like very famous and very fun story. And base 60 was also very used in antiquity.
Base 60.
That's what he says. I'm willing to believe him at that, but I didn't really look into it, like why or where it got used. So then, remember how we talked about the metabase, how we group digits by 3?
Yeah.
And so obviously he talked to me about the metabase. And this one, I'm not sure at all, because it's words that I don't even know the meaning of, but I thought it was really, really cute. Because in French, apparently, we have a metabase of 2, where we say million, milliard, billion, billiard.
Yeah.
Right? In English, it's million, billion, trillion.
Oh.
But I've always been so confused about like the French versus English of billion, etc.
Yeah, me too.
Billion also exists in French, but means something different.
Feel like I'm not sure.
So I guess we can flag that as a fun point, but. So another thing that we didn't talk about is, because we talked about non-integer bases, but we forgot to mention that bases could be negative. You can have -1 as a base. And then it's really fucked up to write negative and positive number, because every power of 2, so every other digit is represents a positive quantity, and every even digit represents a negative quantity. So it's hard to use, but it exists.
I mean, then I'm just wondering if it can be useful for something.
So I still have a few not a few points, but like 2 points. I still have more. This was our longest episode, and it feels like there is like the most stuff that we left out, but even more to say. I mean, so once you've picked your base, your symbols, etc., and your positioning of your symbols with respect to 0.
Yeah.
You still get to choose how to write them. So what Ayaris was saying is that what I was talking about, saying, oh, you lose kind of your grasp for very big numbers, he was saying is the precise problem that the scientific writing is trying to solve, right? To write numbers as x times 10 to the power of y. And so you can still be in the same base, but write them with this logarithmic based.
But I just don't agree at all, though. Like, no one understands what 10 power 47 means. Like, you know that it's big, but like as if you understand that, like, 1046 and 1047, like, the difference between that, like, you don't, and it's, like, huge. You just can't comprehend that kind of difference.
I don't know. I think that if we used this kind of scientific writing all the time, we probably would have a somewhat better grasp on bigger number, but there is still the basic cognitive load of imagining very big numbers that the human brain cannot really deal with. But see, it's not big numbers anymore, because you have like you're splitting this one dimension into two, right? The part before the exponent and the part in the exponent.
Yeah, but the thing is that if your goal is for like people to understand big numbers, clearly like putting 10 and then 47 0 after that, you see much more and like versus like 10 versus like 10 0 after that, you see much more the difference than just like seeing 10 power 10 and 10 power 47. Like you feel the difference like because you look at it.
I guess probably doesn't matter that much psychologically speaking. His conclusion was that the most important factor in base choosing is not what I was talking about having this clarity at higher numbers, but he also recommended to take a smaller number because to him a smaller base, because to him the main cost in choosing the base is that you have to memorize the tables of operation, and most importantly the multiplicative tables.
That's
because you need to hard code all the operations that are under the base.
That's pretty cute.
I guess he thought that 10 was already too much. he teaches math in school, so maybe he has the best opinion out of all of us. But
no, I feel like it was awful. Like learning the table of multiplication was an awful thing to do.
Yeah, so his recommendation is base 6.
6?
Yeah. For the divide abilities. Which brings me to the results of the online polls. So I gathered the votes from everyone on like Gmail, Twitter, YouTube, and Reddit. Leave a comment. And
was there actually vote on YouTube?
No.
It's like what?
I'm always trying to pretend that we have comments and we're picking from them.
Yeah, but maybe we shouldn't, so people that actually listen, like actually vote,
feel sad
and, like,
for us.
Post stuff. Yeah.
Okay. I will leave that in and see. But anyway, it was a tie between 6, as I told you, from Florian.
Oh.
People also voted for 9, 16, and 24.
So it was like 6, 9,
16, and 24.
What we picked last episode ourselves was...
I think we landed on... So you really liked 9, so there was 18 in the running.
Oh yeah, 18.
And I was feeling very 16E because I like to have a direct transcription to the machine.
So basically it's between
all of the above.
Like, I love the point of Florian about learning the multiplication table. Like, I think it's actually a good point.
So you want you're thinking smaller base?
So maybe like in that sense, like 9 works well.
But it's not. You can't take half of 9. You're switching your thought into taking thirds and not halves.
I mean, I like thirds.
By the way, I wanted to tell you about an anime of last season that I watched recently, last season. And the reason why is because it influenced me quite a lot in the making of this podcast. So the name is Eizouken o Dasuna, which means keep your hands off Eizouken. Eizouken meaning the club of making animation. It's an anime by Masaaki Yuasa, who is mostly famous for, I guess, Devilman Crybaby on Netflix in 2019, I guess. Who's famous for having a very noticeable animation style, a very expressive animation. And that is what the anime is actually about. It's a love letter to animation. It's centered around a trio of girls who are passionate about animation and who are making their own anime while being in, I guess, high school or college. And what I found pretty interesting is that the three girls embody three different aspects of the creative process. What you would call the main character presents the director. She makes a lot of concept arts, etc. There is one girl who's passionate about the animation itself, who's a drawer, and she draws a lot and wants to have super realistic, beautiful animation. And the third person, which is very understandable considering the Japanese context, but it represents the production aspect. She's the producer and always makes sure that deadlines are kept, that you can find money for that all the efforts produce money, and she pushes really hard the two others to market themselves and to talk about themselves. And essentially a point that really stuck with me is like, what good is it to do your work if nobody sees it? And it's okay to so one of the girls had a famous family, and it's okay to leverage your fame so that you bring more listeners, more viewers to your animation. And it did give me the courage to start actually using our Twitter account and posting and trying to get people to listen to our thing.
That's cute.
And I don't know, I just found that cute and interesting to see this holy trinity of creative process.
It's really cute to put the three aspects at the same level. Like, I don't know, like, I feel like there's a thing about just saying, like, the producer is always a bit less useful. Like, I always felt that, like, okay, like, keeping, like, when you create something, like, just thinking about, like, the promotion and, like, the money aspect is always a bit bleh. Like, I don't know, you don't really want to think about it, but I feel like they're right. Like, if no one listens to what you're doing or watch what you're doing, like, what's the point?
Above money and all, I think it's very important to have this pragmatic aspect of actually like finishing the project, getting the deadlines, because it's a creative left alone often like starts a billion things and drops them and goes to the next thing.
Tell me about that, Johan.
I guess it's important to have a level-headed person. As to the monetization aspect, I don't know, I still feel a bit gross about the whole parallel between art and money.
The thing with money is like it allows creative person to like actually create more.
Well, yeah, they have to eat for starters.
Yeah, exactly. Like if I don't know, like if I had money, like I would do more podcasts. I would do more, like, I don't know, more stuff, like write more, like develop more. I don't know. I would do. Time is of the essence. So
well, time is money, my friend.
Yeah, exactly. So if you're paid to do like creative stuff, like you can do more creative stuff, basically.
Well, the thing is, if you're paid to do creative stuff, most usually it takes the creative aspect out of your control and into the hands of whoever pays you.
But not really now.
But not necessarily. It doesn't have to be.
I feel like our internet went a bit too shit in the last few years. But the thing that is kind of true is like, it allows people to earn money for what they want to do and for what they want to create.
Yes, but then you have this kind of responsibility towards your fandom, and if you want to completely switch, you might lose them. So you still have an incentive, a financial incentive to keep doing what you're doing, essentially. The financial incentive often like thwarts the creative vision.
This podcast is brought to you by listening. In a world too often dominated by sight, listening offers a refreshing alternative by focusing on a totally different wavelength. Give it a shot.
So today we're gonna talk about like MMORPG and why basically there's no more MMORPG.
Yeah, and we come at it from the perspective of two people who really enjoyed playing World of Warcraft for their time, and we're sad. Well, I'm sad that there is no more MMORPG. I miss MMORPG.
I'm sad as well. Like I've played, so my main MMORPG in my youth was Ragnarok
I
Online.
forgot about that. Oh. I knew that, but yeah.
So I played Ragnarok Online quite a long time, for like basically 4 or 5 years, and like quite a lot. And then I came to World of Warcraft.
It's a emotionally loaded subject, right? We come at it from people missing MMORPGs, and we're like, why can't we have more?
Why can't you and why can't we have new one?
Why can't we have new? Because it's true. So I wanted to do as a brief introduction, an acknowledgement. I know that there still are MMORPGs, which are the same as like 10 years ago. Essentially, the market is dominated by World of Warcraft, and close second, or maybe first, no, because things are shifting a little bit. Final Fantasy XIV is still very big.
I feel like Guild Wars 2 have a big community as well. Not
There
as
is
big as
still
like
a
those.
bit of little contenders like Guild Wars 2, but I haven't. Yeah. So there's still a bunch of stuff that's not quite dead, but they're nowhere near the mass phenomenon that they were 10 years ago. So no, with that out of the way, we can focus on bitching about the present.
Well, it's been like first, like before starting, like how long has it been since like there was like the last MMORPG, like the last big release?
Well, the problem with that is that there's been a lot of big, so-called big releases that flopped, right? And
Like what?
I don't know, Star Wars The Old Republic was really
yeah.
big at launch, and then it completely crashed a few months later.
It was not a good game.
So what would be the last big one for you? The last big one's probably Final Fantasy XIV.
So it's been like 7 years basically without like a big release.
I guess.
So why like let's go right into the subject. Like why would that be? Like I have a few ideas.
I have a few ideas too, and I have been looking at it a lot by seeing what replaced them, like what are the big, because MMORPGs were a big trend in the early 2010s, right? Every other studio wanted to make one, and
I think
then
it was a quick like cash grab basically.
well, it's still a lot of effort, I think, but it was the thing to do to cash grab, I guess. And then, I don't know, they all were commercial failures, and there was this big free-to-play models that started and kind of killed the subscription-based model. So with free-to-play, maybe, question mark, you can't pay for the big servers that MMORPGs need.
But what's weird, why I was always a bit suspicious about like the subscription model is literally like Guild Wars. Like Guild Wars 2 like is a free to play, not really free to play. Like you buy the game for $60.
It's buy to play, the term you're looking for.
Yeah.
You buy the game and you can play.
You buy the game and you can play, and then like you have microtransactions that like allows you to buy, I don't know, like a nice haircut,
Cosmetics.
and that's all. And apparently it works. Like it's still online. They still release like stuff every 2 months. They found like a model that actually work. Like I always found like the subscription model just like basically Blizzard wanting money because like they needed money, but like not really a real thing.
I don't know. Most MMORPGs were subscription based because servers were really expensive, right? When you think of Dark Age of Camelot or EverQuest, I understand completely that they needed some kind of subscription back in 2000 to make their server farm run.
Okay.
I don't think it was out of greed. No, it's debatable whether Blizzard is still justified in their subscription.
In the last few years, like everyone is way more okay at like buying stuff. Now, like releasing a game where you pay like $10 a month would be completely fine. If you look at Fortnite, everyone got a battle pass. The battle pass costs like $6 a month, and it's just for cosmetic. Even in mobile gaming, like
I mean, don't you think it's presented sufficiently differently, because it's presented as microtransaction, as a bundle of microtransaction essentially. So it's in my mind, it's like the economy moved from subscription based to free to play plus microtransactions. Guess now everyone is so yeah. I guess one of the points I wanted to bring up is I'm very sad that all the focus that went into reverse engineering the human brain with big air quotes to provide immersive experience and addictive environments where you would subscribe monthly turned into exploiting the human psyche through addiction mechanism of loot boxes, which is essentially the same cognitive research, but I find it way less cute, less enjoyable for me.
It's less complicated to put in place. With MMORPG, like the big problem is development. Like I like it feels like it's way more complicated to create a good MMORPG than to create like a normal game. And like the universe is a bit bigger, I guess. And like I don't know if you compare like Fortnite with World of Warcraft, like Fortnite was way easier to actually make.
I mean, yeah, it's true that one of the things I miss the most about World of Warcraft is that you have hundreds of regions that you can explore and different enemies, etc. Whereas like Overwatch, you have 10 maps. Oh, cool. And it might even like be the same development cost because those 10 maps are refined as fuck. I mean, they really, really balanced every single corner, but I'm not enjoying it half as much.
Yeah.
I like exploration, not loot boxes.
But maybe, I don't know, I don't play a lot of open world game, like big game, like Red Dead Redemption 2, like that sort of game. But I feel like the map should be bigger than World of Warcraft, no?
Well, World of Warcraft has like 20 years of development, so in size, I don't think so, but I guess it might be on similar scales. But I don't know. One thing I really loved about World of Warcraft is that the map was also very diverse. Just because Red Dead Redemption, you'll have Far West everywhere. But that's a bit orthogonal to the actual question.
To go back like to what changed, even if you play MMORPG, like to have played Guild Wars 2 a lot, like 1 year ago, I feel like the experience changed quite a bit. Like the game didn't change that much, but like the experience did, meaning like no one was talking to each other. Like I was only talking with players that I know in real life, whereas like 10 years ago, I do remember a lot of like talking with like random person, doing quests with random person, like just basically like mingling with like all the player and like finding new person to talk to, even finding new friends in the game, which is not that true with like what's happening today.
This is really true, and I think it's a very interesting observation that has several causes that we should definitely go into. I've seen a lot of analysis on this kind of stuff.
Did you?
Yeah. So one of the easy answers to why that is well, one of the easy answers is that if you take World of Warcraft, for instance, the game changed a lot. At the very beginning, it was impossible to play alone. You had to team up with strangers to defeat strong monsters, essentially. And through the years, they wanted to appeal to everyone and diversify, I guess, the options to level up and have several paths to level up, which resulted in not really needing other people anymore. So you have this force of game design that made the solo experience stronger and the solo or small groups, the social aspect less important, less essential. So it's a bit of a chicken and egg problem because did they make that because the audience was asking for it, or did the audience end up asocial because they made that?
Like that's the problem with everything tech today. Like we listen too much to what users want. Like because coming from a user researcher. No, but that's true though, because like obviously like
I mean, if you design for engagement, yes. What other metrics are you gonna use?
Obviously talking to a random person saying like, oh, do you want to do a quest with me? Like it takes a lot of effort. You don't really want to do it. But like sometimes like you have like an amazing afternoon with that random person and like it's just fun and you talk and like...
I mean, that's how you made friends
time,
back in the day. You made good friends.
Yeah, exactly.
You can't make friends anymore.
Now, obviously, like if you have an option of not doing that, obviously you're not doing it.
But even if you're doing social activities, like I've played Final Fantasy XIV in Japanese to learn Japanese, and I was like, oh, this is a great chance to mingle.
Yeah.
And they have social features. They have of dungeons you can't clear by yourself, but what happens is that people just like get together, clear the dungeon, not a word exchange, and like the world is just hello goodbye. It's really sad.
Yeah, no, but yeah. Also, maybe just because now that like I remember back in the day, like having like not all my friends had like World of Warcraft, or like not all my friends had like actually like good internet, not even to play like Ragnarok Online for free. So like you didn't really have access to your like group friends online.
That's a big element for us now. You pretty much do, right?
Yeah, exactly. Now you're just like, okay, let's get online. That's a big thing. And like then like when your friends are not online and you play alone, like you don't really want to mingle because you know that like they'll be back in like 2 hours.
Even if you try to mingle, you don't have such a great experience because other people are waiting for their friends or stuff like that. And this reminds me of one point I wanted to say is that there is a lot of efforts that have been done through the years to make the games as asocial or anti-social as possible, right? Like no game designer has ever, they don't think about like, oh, how could people make new friends in my game? Half as much as how could I prevent people from insulting each other in my game? And all the focus in like Blizzard, Fortnite, or Riot or whatever has been to how much can I cut communication and not allow new means of communication. It's so sad, but like safety first, I guess.
But that's part also of the community. Like the community of your game, it just reflects on how much like the developer have thought about it. Like if Overwatch has such a toxic community, it's just because the game is toxic. Like World of Warcraft at the start never had that kind of problem. Like I don't remember at all having a toxic community on World of Warcraft at the start.
Okay. So do you think really that it's because if you design assuming that you're gonna have a toxic community, you end up with a toxic community, or do you think it might be about the fact that back in the days World of Warcraft was kind of a hipster thing, whereas now internet is mainstream and everybody's on it, like this kind of democratization?
It depends a bit on like the kind of game that you play, I guess. Like I feel like if you play like when you play Overwatch, like you're a bit more stressed and like so you're more inclined to like be a bit more toxic than like for like World of Warcraft, where it was mostly PvE at like so player versus environment. Like at the start, like the PvP was a bit meh. But so first like the PvP aspect, I think makes for a more toxic game. And also like in Overwatch, like you don't have any time like where you can talk. Basically, if you talk, it's just to say like...
Yeah, I was gonna say, do you think it's because the games need to be like constant activity, constant dopamine push, etc.? But then I remembered like Fortnite is a lot of just dropping... like Fortnite games or Dota games are like 1 hour long and nothing happens, so it's essentially snooze fest, so it's not constant dopamine.
Yeah, but like you always have some, I think like versus like if you compare MMORPG with that kind of game, is that you're playing. Like in World of Warcraft, like you could like go into a city, just sit there, like just like, I don't know, like do your inventory or like whatever, and like then talk.
People don't have time anymore to enjoy like a grandpa. People don't take the time to observe the digital world around them.
But that's so true. No, but like I don't know if you remember, but at the start of World of Warcraft, like you couldn't like there was no teleportation. Like you needed to take your little griffon in a city, like to go from one city to another, and it took like 5 minutes. So like, what did you do? You were talking during that 5 minutes.
I mean, it is fascinating to read game design articles about World of Warcraft, because back when it was created, it was really focused on like all these tricks, giving you the impression that there was a huge world, and like all these tricks designed a little bit like in our Disneyland episode, all these tricks designed to make you think that the world was full of life and full of beauty, whereas now everything's focused on utility and gameplay.
I think like one of the main features that shows that is like the group finder. Like, okay, it's super useful to have a group finder, but I do remember at the start of World of Warcraft, you were going to a city saying, hi, everyone who wants to do that dungeon with me. It took like 1 hour before doing your dungeon, but like you were happy to have your 5 other players, and like you were talking to them because you found them and you wanted to continue doing dungeon with them.
It's a fundamental question of game design. Game design is essentially like creating friction to make an experience. And if you want to be more pleasant or casual or appealing, whatever, you can remove friction, but at the end you get no experience. Today's episode is brought to you by the last breath you take just before you fall asleep. You do it every day, and then never can you single out that elusive white whale. And before you know it, it's gone.
You don't think AR will be a thing ever?
I mean, it's hard to answer this question because I want AR to be a thing, but it's like they are completely determined to not make MMORPGs in AR. when like literally the whole market of anime in Japan is only that. Oh, I wonder if there is demand. Let's look at like the cultural production of the whole fucking country, who are all writing about the same damn thing. No, cite me from the top of your head. One MMORPG in VR being developed.
There's this chat game, no?
VR chat.
Yeah. Okay, what's left to say?
What's left to say? Well, I wanted to tell you a little bit about a kind of like TED Talk-ish conference that I saw 15 years ago that really, really inspired me, and which is one of the reasons why I'm so sad today. So it was a game conference by the game designer Jesse Shell, who is apparently a bit famous, I guess. I don't know. And he was talking about the fact that with the rise of internet back then, there would be more and more online and server-client mechanics, essentially. And the main point of the video was that there would be more and more persistent worlds. And he gave the example of Mario 64, and he was like, oh, in like a few years, Mario is going to have a life on his own in his world, and it's going to tell you when you connect, oh, here's what happened when you went away, and how are things on your side. It's essentially makes the thing a lot more lively and more persistent. Like, I don't know, persistent is not a very nice word, but like a real universe living by itself. And I wonder why it doesn't go that way.
Well, it's fun that you're saying that, because like Animal Crossing is a big thing right now, and like it's literally doing that. Like every day you connect, and it's like you have your little announcement saying like, oh, yeah, what happens on your island. It's not persistent by the mean of like there's no online. Well, there's online.
There is online, yeah. I guess Animal Crossing does fit this definition pretty well. I just wonder why it's not a bigger thing, right?
But don't you feel like all online games like kind of fit that definition though? For example, like Fortnite have a big...
Is there a story even in Fortnite?
But like on Fortnite, like stuff happens, so it's not like every day, or it's not like even every week. But for example, at one point, like, ooh, there's a crack like on the sky, and like for 2 weeks, like no one knew what it was, and like it was all the talk, like everyone was talking about that. And,
but it's not a story, you know.
It's not a story, but it's completely persistent, meaning like there's a world that is like moving in front of you and like changing.
By this definition, Facebook and YouTube are the same. There's always upgrades and updates. It doesn't create an experience. Well, in this case, it did, I guess.
But you can actually, I think, like you could argue that there's no more MMORPG because that feeling is like scratched by all your online. Like now you have Reddit, Facebook, Twitter, and like at one point you don't want to talk to strangers. You just want to play your game and like maybe disconnect a bit.
I guess that there is a lot more like interactions, ways to interact with strangers.
So maybe we could say that we don't play games for the same thing as before. Before it was a way of connecting with like the world, and now it's like a way to disconnect with the world.
Well, that's a really nice conclusion. Too bad it comes like 5 minutes into our second part. But I really like this. This is probably very true. Because maybe the last thing that could follow such a perfect conclusion is for me to ask you, is there anything you're looking forward, any game in development that you're following? Like what's next? What is to be done? What is to be excited about?
In actual development, I really don't know. I'm a bit like meh, we'll see. So I'm excited about like maybe like more social, but in the sense of like link to like another platform. Like so the YouTube Stadia combo, I think would have been like could have been or would have
Could be.
whatever. Like
Could be.
be.
Once Stadia starts.
Like could be a great fun stuff. Then there's like VR obviously, but like as like we didn't say it, but like VR could be like really really great. I think it's still a bit early apparently. It will go. I think like hardware is still lacking, and so
Damn, this is very vague. You're not giving me much to latch on to. Yeah, as for me, I saw a video recently from a channel I think called it's called NS Nerd Sniper, who does postmortem of video games that are dead, like Maple Story 2 or Heroes of the
Maple
Storm.
Story.
Yeah, he made a cute video like 2 years ago saying how World of Warcraft was so big that it basically killed all of the competition and killed therefore the market, and the hope was in alternative monetization. So he cited a lot of Kickstarter backed MMORPGs that were in the works. But I mean, it's been 2 years and I haven't seen any big wave, but I still need, I guess, to look more into that, I guess. 5 times saying I guess. But that was a fun video. I'm gonna put it in the show notes if you want to get
I mean, I'm always a bit skeptical about big projects on Kickstarter. Like a MMORPG is...
Yeah, but his point was that any company would prefer fast, easy cash grab like 5 maps and loot boxes to really well thought immersive experience. So he was saying that you might want to look on alternative monetization and player-backed games. No, but really, so we talked about what games you were excited about and what games I was excited about, and I guess there is actually not that much in our list.
Yeah.
But I would be really, really, really curious and excited to hear about what you guys are excited about. Like, I want more games to look into.
And I think we also had like completely a blind spot on more like FPS-y kind of game.
But so, yeah, essentially, like any good MMORPG you can recommend. I'm very, very desperate. People, please help me. You can help me on Twitter, YouTube, Reddit, Gmail.
Gmail?
Well, not dailypodcast@gmail.com.
Or Reddit. And like if you listen, like even just like liking our post on Reddit or Twitter, just like show, because we have some statistics about how many listeners we have. But
show that you're live.
Yeah, just like show that you exist and you're not bots would be nice. Okay, well everyone, bye. Thank you for listening and see you not tomorrow. Like by the way, COVID-19, just keep it and I'll put